I am just excited to have Simone Milasas here on the show. Simone is an entrepreneur, creator, creative business coach, international business owner, and author, worldwide coordinator of Access Consciousness. She has been on the cutting edge of business creation and development for over a decade and has trained business leaders and innovators all over the world. Simone is the author of Joy of Business, translated into 13 languages, and best-selling book, Getting Out of Debt Joyfully, translated into 5 languages. Simone, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bert. Thank you for having me here.
You bet. And you're in Amsterdam.
I am. I was just apologizing to Bert if there's lots of noise out here. We are smack bang in the middle of Amsterdam, Netherlands. It's awesome. It's summer. It's beautiful. It's busy.
Yeah. And you know what? Amsterdam, it has a lot of great energy. My son was just there a few months ago. And so, yeah, it's a great city. You know what? So interestingly enough, let's talk about this, because this is one of those areas where a lot of entrepreneurs really have a struggle with, and that is doing business while they travel, right? Or trying to take care of business. And so let's just jump into the program, talk about that, since you are right there in the smack of Amsterdam.
Sure. Well, you know what? One of the things I find interesting, Bert, is most of the time it's not the actual person having a struggle with doing business while traveling. It's all the projections that you get. I can't tell you how many times people say to me, "Oh, I hope you've had a great, holiday," or "I'll talk to you when you get back." And I'm like, no. I'm away for like 8.5 weeks. I get home for 3 days and then I'm gone again for another month. So I'm available. And one of the things I always say to people is, I'm available no matter what. At nighttime, I always put my phones on silent, so you will not wake me. I do not expect you to know what time zone I'm in, and I'll always call you back. So I think it's sort of more that energy of making sure that you know you're available, and then convincing others is not as easy because it's not the way they do business. And yet, if you know it's okay for you, it ends up, running a lot smoother.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that this is one of those things, especially what a blessed time to be in business, especially if you have a small business or you have a solo practice, because back in the day, when everything was a hard line and very few cell phones were available and there was no internet, leaving for 8 weeks could be disastrous. But today, I think most people are very flexible. And so if you are going to go traveling, I think it's pretty easy to coordinate. And I think it's about time that people stop using that as an excuse not to enjoy their time, not to spend time with their family, not to take that needed vacation, because we all need to travel and recharge and have fun.
Yeah. And you know what? I have a very different point of view though, Bert. I look at every day as, life is great. It's there to enjoy it. It's like, have fun. And to me, it feels like every day's a holiday and every day's work, which also brings that, a lot of the times people go, I don't think Simone realized it was Sunday when she called me. And everyone I work with going, yeah, she knew it was Sunday. She just didn't care, and I just went out to lunch at one of my favorite restaurants in Amsterdam with my husband. And the first thing I did, because I knew I needed to be on call for some people and on some projects that we're working on, so I just asked if they had wireless. At the same time, I'm ordering a great bottle of wine, And so I just sit there and I check some of my Skypes. And I do see that people have the point of view, oh, but you should be there and you should have this time with your husband. You should be having time off. I don't actually agree with that. I think if you're present with your work and present with where you are, then you can create a really different reality.
Yeah, well, you know what? And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's your point of view, right? There are times where, there's some people, again, your husband supports that. I think that's great. I know that I can get very hyper focused and I will almost lose, I'll just go down the tunnel and I'll forget that I'm at a restaurant or that I'm, or whatever. And so for me personally, I have a tough time focusing on one or the other. Or let me rephrase that. I can focus on one or the other, but something's going to suffer. So for me personally, if I was at a nice restaurant, I might put everything else on hold so I can give everybody, the people at the restaurant undivided attention. But again, I think it has to fit your personality, and I think you have to coordinate it with your clientele, because there's no excuse not to have fun as you're traveling or as you're experiencing, some time with your loved ones, or a bottle of wine or whatever. So again, to me personally, I hate it when I hear people say, well, I can't do this or that because I have to take care of my clients. It's like, man, you're missing out on some,
Exactly.
sweet part of life.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? And I think you hit the nail on the head as well, Bert, is that you need to look at what works for you. I'm away on this tour for just over 8 weeks. So pretty much every day I'm out at a restaurant, like at least once a day. So otherwise I'd just be known as some lush if I was just out at restaurants every day and not working. So yes, I do actually, sit there and answer some things or make a phone call. Yeah. Or a lot of the lunches also are inviting, people I work with, either their clients or their staff, and we have lunch together. And you create so much whilst you're at a great restaurant, nice bottle of wine, and you're creating. So I think you do have to see what works for you. And one of the things I would recommend to start to get that perspective and that clarity on what does work for you is if you take 1 hour a day and 1 day a week to do something that nurtures you. And that could be anything, it could be, I don't know, a bath, walk in the woods, a swim on the beach. Or as a friend of mine who's living in Korea at one stage, he rang me and said, I want to do this thing where you're talking about 1 hour a day and 1 day a week to do something that nurtures me. And he really loved business, hence the joy of business. So he said, I'd really like to see if I can get one of your businesses into Korea. Can I play with that for that 1 hour a day, 1 day a week? And I was like, sure. Like most people wouldn't look at that as something that nurtures them. But for him, it was something really creative. So it could be anything. It could be reading a book. It could be painting a picture. It could be, watching a movie, not based on checking out, based on being present with your choice. So I think you need to be really present with what choices you make. And like you said, what works for you, not what works for somebody else. It's like what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you said that, because that is so truly important to do that nowadays. And, and you hit the what do you call it, with your Korean story there about the joy of business. And I think a lot of people lose that. I want to talk about, business being fun. And you talk a lot about that. Again, you have a couple of books dedicated to, business should be fun. And I think a lot of people have lost that. So talk about this. Why should business be fun?
Well, you know what? I thought everybody had a joy of business. And it took me having a conversation with the founder of Access, who I work with, Gary Douglas. One day I was talking to him and I said to him, I don't get why this person is choosing something. And he went, what do you mean? And I went, well, there's no joy in that. And he looked at me and he said, what are you talking about? It's business. And I went, yeah, people do business for the fun of it, for the joy of it. And he looked at me and he went, oh, no, they don't. And literally I was like, one of those people going, what? My face on the side going, are you kidding me? Like, why doesn't everyone do business for the fun of it, for the joy of it? So it did take me a little while to realize that I was different. And as I discovered I was different and started talking about this and doing seminars about it, and then, someone said to me, you should write a book on this. And it's, escalated from there. And as you said, it's like in 13 languages, and we're coming out in Russian next month, actually. So as that escalated and I met more and more people, I realized it was sort of like this, people hid this secret that if they love doing business and being in business, it wasn't the thing that you spoke about. Like at most dinner parties or, get-togethers, people rather choose to talk about trauma and drama. They choose about, the stress and how much money they don't have and what they haven't created, rather than going, you know what, I absolutely love what I'm doing here and I love what I'm creating. And be willing to actually know that, and that it's okay for you to love what you do. Like what if we talk about, people think that they're going to be happy when they have money. What if it was the other way around? You woke up and you just chose happiness, and then money followed that. Money followed joy. It wasn't joy following money. So completely different reality. It's like twisted all around. And then have a look at what brings you joy. And I can almost guarantee you that money will start to follow if you're functioning from that place.
Yes. Well, look, I think it was Marianne Williamson, who I think she's got a book or something about, happy for no reason. I think that's important.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much money you make. Sooner or later, that level of money loses its shine or its luster. And, I look at, I'm going to use Charlie Sheen as an example. And people say, well, he blew up or he had this breakdown because he was on drugs. And I don't agree with that. I think that he had this breakdown because he had lost his joy. He was having problems at that job. I think it was 3.5 Men. And he finally had enough. And drugs was his release. And he finally couldn't take it anymore. And he ranted about, how much he disliked working there. And he disliked his bosses. And he had this, this major blowout. And here's a guy who's getting paid like $1 million or $2 million per episode.
Yeah.
And you would think, oh, this guy should be the happiest guy in the world. But we see that money for him doesn't make him happy, doesn't bring him any joy. Now he's doing more or less the exact same thing on a different network, wearing almost the exact same clothes. But he says he loves working for the people he's working for now, which, by the way, one of them is his brother. But it's just one of those funny things where if you really love what you're doing, and I love this attitude of having the joy of business or the joy of doing what you love or whatever, that is so important. And so many people miss that. And that's why they're miserable. No, doesn't matter how much money they have, doesn't matter how many people they're surrounded, doesn't matter how many awards they get. They are miserable because they've lost that zeal, they've lost that joy. And until you get that back, you're going to be miserable.
Well, I think one of the things to start to get that back to is have a look at what you're creating in your life and what you're doing based on a necessity rather than a choice. Like you mentioned money, and it's like, I mean, for years and years and years, I refused money. I was like, no, it's not about the money. I don't need money, and had all these justifications. And then when money started showing up, I justified why I had it and that I would do good things with it. And then till a friend of mine said to me, Simone, you're making all this money. What if you just enjoyed it and you just had it? And I started to actually, I've got to say, receive money, and it became a choice. So I think you can have a lot of fun with money. I've learned to have a lot of fun. I mean, I way prefer traveling first class than traveling economy, different things like that. But I think you need to look at what are the choices that you're choosing in your life and what is it you would like to choose, not based on necessity. So if you've become extremely successful in something, then all of a sudden it becomes this thing that you have to grip onto and you have to make it a necessity rather than going, okay, what if you woke up each and every day and asked, would I like to choose this? I mean, I think the same thing in relationship. I've been, with my husband for 8 years now, and every single day I still think we wake up and go, okay, so, is this a contribution to my life? Would I like to choose this? And with your money, your job, everything, ask, okay, is this a contribution to my life? And would I like to choose this today? And if I wasn't choosing it, what would I choose? And allow yourself to have that amazing amount of possibilities that are available in the world instead of locking yourself into something. If someone's in some sort of career and I just did a podcast today and someone worked in a job for 16 years and then went, I'm done, I'm leaving, I'd like to choose something different. And her life is just blooming. So you can still make that choice no matter how old you are, young you are, woman, man, child, whatever it is, there's still choice available.
Yeah. Interesting that you said that you talked about that money thing, because there's something else that people have a struggle sometimes having the joy of money. They first of all, we all work hard to get our money. All of a sudden we start getting money and we've all heard of people who spend the money as quickly as they get it because they get nervous. They're not, they haven't, like you said, received it yet. Yes, on some level they've received the money, but maybe not in their heart or their self-esteem. And so they're struggling with all this money. Some of them feel guilty. Some of them just do really goofy things. We see all these, we've heard, I'm going to pick on rappers because some of them are really the most, I think, what do you call it? Extreme examples of people who just weren't prepared to have money. I think athletes are another extreme example of people who weren't ready to receive that money. And then all of a sudden they're buying like fur covered sinks and, weird stuff. And all of a sudden they take, $20 million. And then before you know it, they're broke and they're filing bankruptcy. It's just,
Yeah.
the joy, it's just one of those things that we have a tough time
Yeah.
receiving, almost like love.
Yeah. And it is receiving. And I've got, if anyone's out there listening to this too, because I see a lot of people who, when they get money, as you're saying, the first thing they do is go, oh, what can I spend it on? What bills do I have to pay? Rather than take a moment, get that money, put it in your hand. Like if you can, get cash, roll around the bed naked with it if you have to, and just go, oh, what's it like to actually have money? Have money. You don't have to spend it. You don't have to go and get, I love the fur covered sinks because that's so not going to work. You don't have to do that. And yet enjoy it. And it's like you're allowed to have money. And the other thing I would say is however much money you have right now, you're allowed to times it by 10, times it by 100. I mean, if I ask people to, if you like tap into the energy of money in the world, like how much money is there in the world? And it's like, is there a lack of money or is there a lack of people choosing it? So what if you were one of the people who were allowed to choose it? And you don't have to be like me and justify why you have money. I mean, I did. Honestly, I was like, but there's starving people here. It's all this. I will give it away. I will do this. I mean, I bought a friend a car at one stage to justify why I was making money. It's like, you don't have to do that. It's like, you can just have money and simply enjoy it. And what if money also was about changing people's lives? What if there was a generosity of spirit that you could have and be with money that changed people's lives beyond what they expect? Like, you know what? Give some money to someone who has more money than you. It's like, and see what happens. Like people always try and gift and give to people who have less money. What if it was the other way around? Like whose reality could you totally, screw with and change with money?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know what? And that is to me one of the reasons to have a business is so you can accumulate wealth faster, and now you can use that wealth to do great things, right? I have a bunch of friends of mine who have built hospitals and schools. I work with several other charity organizations, and you cannot help your community. You cannot help other people unless you have money. And I'm not saying that you need to, be a gazillionaire, but let me tell you, when you are struggling with money, when you are in that scarcity mindset, it's hard to give from that place. We see people that aren't affluent, but because they're not coming from that place of scarcity, they give of their time, and they're able to organize people, and they make things happen with or without money, but that's because of their mindset and not because of their wealth.
Yeah. Can I there's a friend of mine, Gary Douglas, who's doing a class in Washington, D.C., which I think is brilliant. And it's called Leaders of the Future on the 20th of this month. It's a free class. You can jump on live stream. And what he's actually doing some stuff for and raising some money for is, all the kids in the US who have started, standing up for their rights and being the stewards from all the gun shooting, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole lot of things that have occurred with that I heard that some of them were refused to get into college, etc., because they're basically being different and they're, arguing against what is and asking for a different reality. And so, he's doing this class called the Leaders of the Future, and it's for that. And it's like, it's free. And it's like, when you have money and you create a business that is successful, you have the ability to change people's realities more than you think.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? And here's the thing. It's thinking outside of yourself. And, it's one of those weird things because there is a shift, and I'm guilty of this too. I've had the extreme pleasure of being a father to 5 children, and my wife and I have been together for 30 years. And there's a part where you want everything for your child, and you're going to help them walk, and you want to help them overcome this and that. And then as they start to, let's say, break out and become independent, then I always find myself kind of holding them back and controlling that. It's like, and as parents, we sometimes can do the most amount of damage to our kids. And so I'm very excited to see a lot of these kids who are, like you said, they're taking charge, They're trying to make a difference now. And it boggles my mind how many adults, quote adults, are telling these, 15, 16, 17, and 18-year-olds that they shouldn't be doing that and they can't be doing that. It's like, why not? Let them do it. Let them try and see what happens.
Well, my dad, he's passed away quite a few years now, but I was very grateful growing up with him because he always gave me choice, and he always said to me, Simone, your life, it's like, you have the choice what it is you'd like to choose, and you have to do that. And he always said, I'll be here for you. And sometimes I would choose something and he'd be like, oh, Simone, I'm worried. And I'd be like, don't worry. But my mother tried to control me, whereas my dad allowed me to have choice. And knowing that he was there and he was available, I mean, even when I left to go overseas at 18, 19 and went for 3 years with hardly any money in my pocket, he gave me a credit card just in case sort of thing. But I knew I had him, and he allowed me to discover the world and have the adventures that I could, from what I was choosing, not based on what somebody was telling me that I had to do. Because we all know we hate to be told what to do. I hate it. No one likes to be told what to do. So I love that what is occurring in the world today with kids actually being able to have more choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? It's what's the old saying? And again, I don't know who started it or who said it or whatever, but I think it was Nelson Mandela who says, the impossible is impossible until somebody does it.
Exactly. True.
Yeah. And so who am I to tell my kids they can't do something? And I really try not to tell them not to do something. I want them to go out there, especially we have 2 kids left at home. So I want them to go out there. I want them to try, and I want them to mess up because now's the perfect time to do it. But really, who is anybody to tell somebody they can't do something based on their fear, based on their, lack of experience, or maybe, whatever. But I think everybody should go out there and try it, try multiple things. It's really about failing faster, getting messy, and just, I think if you allow yourself to go through that, live, like you said, with, basically no money in your pocket, there's a lot of juice in there. There's a lot of great experiences. Some of the best books, some of the best stories, some of the best movies come from these, quote, bad times. And one of my favorite stories is, Sylvester Stallone. When he created Rocky, he had no money. He was penniless. He had sold his dog. He had sold everything he has. And, it was like in a 3-day period where he wrote the script of Rocky. And then he was offered, like, I believe $200,000 or $300,000 not to be in the movie because, who wants to listen to a guy, to an actor go, hey, yo, you want me? And, nobody can understand me. And so I think he was offered a couple $100,000 not to be in the movie. He turned that down. And I thought, man, that takes a lot of guts when you're that broke. And anyway, so here we are. We have Rocky because this guy stuck to his vision. And, the same thing with, I'm sorry, the young lady who did Harry Potter, quote, she was broke too. And look what she did.
Yeah, created it for a kid. I mean, that to me is being a leader of the future. It's like not letting go of what it is you truly desire to create and just heading forward no matter who judges you, no matter who projects at you. It's like you keep moving forward and you keep choosing what it is that brings you joy. And that's, what I have been, we've got a whole lot of joy business facilitators out there that facilitate classes based on the joy of business. Because I see so many people go into judgment of themselves, like I said before, of what they haven't created, rather than actually having a look at what they have created and what would they like to create and to continue forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know what? It's if we all take time to realize how many, quote, imperfect people have created outstanding change. I mean, I've already mentioned Nelson Mandela. Here's a guy who spent 26 years locked up.
Yeah. Came
out, becomes president of that country, and then goes on to really change the hearts of many people. Just a great leader. But who would have thought that, he would be able to do that? And it just takes somebody with a very strong mindset. Stephen Hawking, who just passed away, here's a guy that really was left with nothing but his mind, still wrote books, created multiple movies, did a series on TV, and all he had left was his mind. His body had, was, as we all know, had gone away. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about getting out of debt. How do we get out of debt? Again, you wrote the book, Getting Out of Debt Joyfully. So let's talk about getting out of debt joyfully.
I like the way you say the word joyfully at the end. That's the thing that most people struggle with. They're like, debt, it's like, how do I do this? So, I mean, like we mentioned at the beginning of when we talked about business, the main thing I say is you have to change your point of view. Because, I mean, Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So I see people try and do the same thing over and over again with money rather than actually ask, okay, what's my point of view about money? Because most of us grow up with a point of view about money based on our parents. I mean, when I grew up at the kitchen table when we had dinner, we weren't allowed to talk about business and we weren't allowed to talk about money. We had to talk about, the birds outside, the neighbor up the road, or, something like that I was like, really? This is our conversation? Whereas my dad was in business, loved it, and I would way have preferred to talk about things like that. So one thing with my son now is I never hide anything from him with money. If he asks a question, give him the answer, give him the information.
Yeah.
So, and there's a whole lot of pragmatic tools that we do have in the book, Getting Out of Debt Joyfully, that starts to change your point of view. And I mean, one of the ones that changed my money flows the most is what we call the 10% account. And there's different variations of this around the world. And I hated this when I first saw it, when I first heard about it, is every single cent you earn, you put away 10% that's just for you, okay? And this is not for a rainy day. It's not to help a friend out. It's not for Christmas time. It's not for anything like that. It's literally you put 10% away of everything you earn that's just for you. So every $100, it's $10 you put away. Now, when I first started doing this, I was $187,000 in debt, Australian dollars, so it's pretty much nothing compared to US. and I was like, this makes no sense. I owe all these people money and I'm putting away 10% for me. I should be paying my bills. But one of the things that I got from this is I learned to honor me and not the bills. And I literally rang every single person I owed money to. And I said, look, I'm really aware I owe you this money. I'm really sorry. And I'm going to do the best I can to pay you back. And I started paying everyone back, even if it was $50 a week. And I made that demand in my world that would occur. But what I also did, and I think this is a huge thing people have to look at, is I didn't stop creating my life. So putting away this 10% for me, and I'm telling you, it made no sense. And for me, I made this this demand. I went, okay, 3 months. I'm going to do this for 3 months, no matter how crazy this is. At the end of 3 months, I'm going to see what changes. And what I noticed is, because I thought the worst thing that I can do is I'll get that money and I'll just pay all my bills. But at the end of 3 months, what I noticed was I had more of a sense of peace with money. There was more like this relaxation. It wasn't, living paycheck to paycheck or, living from this stressful moment. I knew that if anything occurred, okay, I had enough money to live for 3 or 4 months, nicely, not on 2-minute noodles, It's like I could create something more. And what I did notice is, and sounds so crazy and without a word of a lie, the bills started to slow down and I started to have more money. And again, it goes back to that energy of going, okay, what's it like to actually have money in my life? I hadn't given myself that freedom to do that and that choice to do that. So that's just one of the tools that we talk about. And honestly, if you're listening and you go, that's crazy, that's insane, I hate that, I implore you, if you have a problem with money or you're not making as much money as you would like, do it for 3 months and see what changes for you. You may not even have more money, but look at the energy, look at your point of view around money and ask, if I was creating my financial reality today, what would I choose? Because you've got to start looking at what you would choose. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the takeaways I get from that is, there's the, one of the, what do you call it? Laws, if you will, laws of attraction, laws of business, laws of focus. Whatever you focus on expands. So if you started putting money aside for yourself,
yep,
And again, might just be a couple of dollars a month. And it may sound silly, but you're building a habit, you're building that energy, and more importantly, it's a focus that will continue to expand. And what I've learned is that the money in the bank, and when I say money in the bank, call it, where that is, cash, savings, stocks, things that can be liquefied fairly quick. The money in the bank gives you more peace than just about anything else, and allows you to be creative. It doesn't allow, as you said, allows you choice to do different things, and you don't get, you don't have that energy constipation, if you will, that worry about money, right?
Yeah. Well, banks take you more seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? I bought, one of the things I did do was I put some money into some stocks as well. And I bought a house on the river in Noosa, which there's not many of those, houses available. It's considered a luxury home. I bought that literally with a penny stock that I just started with $500 into an account many years ago. And I went, this sounds like fun. What if I started creating money this way? And then I ended up buying this river house. And like I said, banks take you seriously. If you've got, over $100,000 sitting in an account just for the sheer fun of it, because it's your 10% account, they're like, how much money can I give you today?
Yes.
And then you start using this reality to your advantage and start having fun with money instead of avoiding it. And trust me, I was very, very good at avoiding it.
Yeah. I think we have, when I say we, globally, society, people in general, I want to say, again, civilized people, right? We have this love-hate relationship with money. We're supposed to love it, but yet, we don't talk about it. And, money is the root of all evil. Hey, save for a rainy day, and, all these other misconceptions about money. And then you wonder why the average person is, living paycheck to paycheck, and, the average person can't retire because they have no savings, things of that nature. And I think that, for everybody listening today, getting your mind right about money, getting your heart right about money is a great thing. And I love this idea of putting 10% aside just for you, letting that expand, joyfully getting out of debt. That, to me, is a great, a great tip there. The other thing that I want to point out is that you mentioned, that you didn't put your life on hold. I mean, you were upfront. You contacted your debtors and said, hey, I'm going to pay you back. I know I owe you the money. Let me tell you, everybody who's ever had a creditor, whether it's a friend, a business partner that you gave money to, and all of a sudden you haven't heard from them, that to me is annoying. It smacks of ungratefulness, right? If I owe you money, it's my job to contact you either by text or email or smoke signals or a postcard and say, Simone, I know I still owe you that money. Here's what's going on. I haven't forgotten about you. I'm going to pay you off. And again, that allows you to continue to build that relationship. As you mentioned, build your business. You cannot hide because of debt. And, and not all debt is bad to begin with. So I think that people really need to take some of this stuff and take it to heart. And the book, again, is Getting Out of Debt Joyfully, right?
That's correct.
Getting out of
I
debt
just love
joyfully.
the way you say the joyfully, because it's like joyfully, like, is it possible? Yes, it is. Hey, I just want to comment on what you just said too, because one of the people that I called when I owed all this money, I owed him the most money, and it was a business that I was working with, and he said to me, hey, I'd like to invite you out to dinner. Like, my wife and I'd like to ask you to dinner. And I went, are you kidding? And I was like, Matt, I owe you all this money and you want to invite me out? And he went, yeah. He said, Simone, we adore you and we love what you do and we love what you create. And he was so grateful, and there was this honoring that went on, because we're not robots. We actually like to engage with other people and like to have this, gratitude and generosity. It's like, that energy of contribution is amazing what it can expand. So yeah, totally agree. And it's like, and you're going to hate probably calling people, but you know what? I can guarantee you most of the time you might get someone who's cranky or angry for a minute or two, but they're literally going to be grateful that you reached out to them and engaged with them and had some sort of, communication, some sort of chat about it, and contributed to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I'm glad you brought up, yeah, you might find somebody who says, you know, Bert, you owe me a bunch of money. You promised it to me. You broke your promise. You're scum. You're a douchebag, and whatever. But you're right. You know, it might be, you know, 1 out of 20 that does that, or it's a small group. And just deal with it. Just deal with it the best you can. And that's why I love the fact that, you know, we can contact people via text, via email, via, you know, letters if you want to go old school. You know, there's so many different ways. And I've never had somebody hate me so much that didn't take the money that I owed them.
That's
you know, I've never had anybody that mad at me that didn't.
That's true. You know, and I've got a great line you can use for someone if they do get, you know, feisty at you. You can say, I'm so sorry. And it's like, what can I do to make up for the damage done? Because when you put that ball in their court, most of the time, all they want is some sort of acknowledgement in truth.
Yes.
So it's a good line to use. Use it.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. All right. So let's talk about this. You know, in your book, I'm sorry, I said The Joy of Business. I lost it.
One of the books, Joy of Business, Getting Out of Debt Joyfully.
Yeah, Joy of Business. Yep. And so in the book, Joy of Business, you talk about the 4 types of people you need. The 4 types of people you need. Let's talk about the 4 types. What are the 4 types?
Okay. So it's more about the energy. It's not, you don't necessarily need 4 people. But the energy that each business really requires is creator, connector, mover, okay? And the last one is foundational. So the creator is the person who, you know, has those amazing ideas, that person who goes, oh, got another one, you know, wakes up in the morning, the person who comes out of the shower and goes, you know what, I was just in the shower and thinking about this. Like, they're so incredibly creative. They think everybody else is that creative, but they're not. They're so incredibly creative. And they come up with a zillion ideas. And then what I see occurs is they go to a judgment of themselves because they haven't actualized. So what that person needs and what that business needs, or those ideas, is also the mover. And the mover is the person who has the ability to perceive what is required now to create a future. You know, it's like, what do you got to put in place now to create this idea coming into actualization and being, you know, massive, exponentialize it. And then the connector is the one who just talks to everybody, you know, talks to everybody. That sort of person who would chat to you in the elevator or in the supermarket line. They're the connector. They're the one that, you know, if you say, hey, can you make these calls? They're like, sure, who else can I call? You know, they're the people who can do cold calling. They're great on social media, etc. There's a whole, you know, array of way you can look at that. But you need the creator, connector, and mover. Now, some people might be all 3. So that's when you'd be called a foundational person. And I find most foundational people, if you're good at all 3, you sort of tend to be a great manager or a great CEO. You have that bird's eye view, that, you know, helicopter view where you can look at everything and go, oh, this is what's required here, here, here. And you're capable of all of them, yet you don't have to choose all of them. So for myself, I would say I'm a great foundational person. I'm good at all 3. Now, interesting enough, I meet thousands and thousands of people all over the world, and I prefer to create and move. Connecting is my least favorite, but I can walk into a room and talk to, you know, man, woman, child, rich, poor, you know, royalty, whatever. It doesn't matter to me, but it's not my preference. So I would tend to get more connectors to connect my business. And most of the time, people don't have a good time of promoting themselves. They need someone outside of themselves to do that. So it's the energies that you require of creation, connection, and moving of the business.
I love that. All right. So we have the creator, mover, connector, and foundational person. These are the 4 types. And this is important because these are, you know, what is it? The 4 strengths that everybody has, or what? Not everybody has. Let me rephrase it. It's really the 4 strengths. And if you can, and this is great because if you have a team, you know, if you're in a situation where you have a team that this is a great way to put a team together, because if you just have a team of, let's say, great idea people, the creators, nothing's going to get done. I mean,
No,
they're going to have a lot of
sit
fun.
around and be like, yes, this is
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, let's go. And then exactly nothing gets done. I did a great consult with someone from New Zealand once, and she had this great idea, this great concept. She'd created this whole website, and it was such a great revenue stream, and it could make a lot of money, but she went, it's not working. And I was like, but who's connecting it? Like, who's actually getting it out there? You know, a website, there's zillions of websites out there.
Yeah.
Unless you have someone connecting it and making the world know it exists, it's not going to work. So, but the shame I see, Bert, is that people are so brilliant and they don't acknowledge their capacities. And if you acknowledged your capacity and were willing to acknowledge what else has to be added. So one of the questions I always ask is, who or what else has to be added to the business? Because you see, especially people like creators, they're so creative and yet they sit in constant judgment, and people tell them, oh, he's got so many ideas, but none of them actually come to fruition, sort of thing. You know what? It's not his fault. They just need a connector. So it's not looking at what you're not good at. It's actually acknowledging the capacities you have. And one of the things I'm going to say too is the majority of the time, whatever you're great at, you think everybody's great at. You think, it has no value. And the one thing that you're not good at is the one that you've decided is like, oh my God, if I could only connect. And it's like, no, you're a great creator. Just get someone, else into the business. So it's a matter of playing with it and really asking questions, always being in question, never defining your business. The second you go to a definition of your business, you've started destroying it and killing it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's so funny that you talked about the person who's got all these great ideas and can't ever get anything done, because I've met so many people like that. And in fact, I would say a lot of the entrepreneurs that I know are like that, right?
Absolutely.
They had this great idea, they launched the business, and all of a sudden the business kind of just stays there.
Yep.
And they can't, it doesn't have any traction because they don't know how to, take the next step. They don't have any connectors. They don't have any movers. And that's why I think so many good businesses fail, is you have this person who got a great idea.
Yep.
Let's say they know how to do this one thing brilliantly, but they don't know how to sell. They don't know how to market. And therefore their business stagnates and dies and whatever. The other thing is, I think, and I want to get your opinion on this, I think a lot of people sometimes are afraid. They're afraid to delegate because they're a control freak. And then there's the other people who are afraid because they don't want to share in the pie. I've met so many people who they're like, oh, it's that scarcity control mindset where they want, hey, I could bring in a partner, but then I'd have to give up some of the money. Well, dude, you don't have any money now, or you're struggling now. I mean, it's not like you have, millions of dollars coming in and therefore you're going to give something up. You have nothing, or you don't have enough.
Yeah. And that's like, as I was talking before about the generosity of spirit as well. If you see that someone's going to be a major contribution, contribute to them. And it's like, you know what? And yes, we are all control freaks. And I think every person has to put their hand up and say, yes, I'm a control freak of magnitude. And one of the questions I would ask is, ask yourself every day, it's like, what would happen if I was out of control with the business today? And it doesn't mean like, getting drunk and dancing on tabletops. You can do that if you want. But it's like, what would I choose if I was out of control with the business today? I mean, you might have someone who walks in and, you're looking for someone who has a degree or has experience, and then someone walks in and there's just this energy that you're like, yep, that. And it's like, be willing to ask questions, be willing to follow the energy, and you have to be willing to be out of control. And trust me, I am a control freak of magnitude. I think I'm could be one of the most controlling people in the world, but I've learned to let go of control and know when somebody else actually has more information than me, they have more capacities than me. One of the questions I used to ask and still ask is, what would it take for someone to show up who does this better than me? And it's not better based on judgment. It's better based on someone, may be able to sell better than me, or, create something better than me, whatever it is. And that starts to get you out of that place of being in control.
Yes. Yeah. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, to me, I much rather have a percentage of a very successful company. I mean, you look at Facebook. I apologize. I cannot remember one of the co-founders of Facebook. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he only has like 5% of the company. He might have 10%, and maybe it's even less than that. But he was the roommate of Mark Zuckerberg back in the day, I think, and so his small percentage of Facebook is still billions of dollars. He is a billionaire because of that small percentage.
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg, bless his heart, would not be where he's at today had he tried to do everything himself. He had a great idea, and I want to say that he probably had a lot of the personality traits that you talked about, Simone, in the sense that they were, he was a mover. I don't know if he was that great of a connector because he seems a bit socially awkward.
Yeah.
But he still had a lot of great traits. But there's no way he would have done what he did by himself, and to own 2 or 3 or 5% or 10% of Facebook. Man, that would be a great deal.
There's some serious noise going out here in Amsterdam. I'm not sure if you can hear it. So yeah, and the same. I take my hat up to someone like Richard Branson.
Yes.
He's continuously creating new businesses and new possibilities. For people, for the world, for himself, and for the sheer joy of it and the fun of it. He's got some brilliant books out as well. Highly recommend one of his books called Business Stripped Bare. And he's always looking at that. He's looking at the creation. He was never looking at the amount of money coming in. And yet he does love money and enjoys money. And he enjoys, changing people's worlds with it and changing people's realities and, as well as his own. Yeah. And it's like, be willing to give away, some of the pie. There's this scene in Star Wars years ago, and one of the characters is holding on to the universe, and they say, and they say in the scene, if you're not willing to let go of this universe, you can't receive the others. And that's exactly what it is. If you're not willing to let go of something, how can you receive anything else?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And a quick shout out to Cristina Pedrosa. Eduardo Severin was the guy's name that I was talking about. So Eduardo Severin was the gentleman's name. Christina, thank you for that. And so absolutely, there's, I think that Branson is a great example that you talked about. Here is a guy who really enjoys business. He has fun all over the place. He doesn't take himself very seriously. Matter of fact, I was talking to Guy Kawasaki, and he told me this great story about Richard Branson. And Richard Branson and him were backstage in the green room. They were waiting for their time to speak or whatever. And Richard Branson asked Guy Kawasaki, how did you get here? What airline did you use? And Guy mentioned whatever airline he used. And all of a sudden, Richard Branson, who again is a multi-billionaire and jumped to his knees, just jumped on the ground on his knees and is looking at, is on the floor looking to Guy saying, please, please, please try Virgin Airlines. Now, he was doing it, he had fun with it. But let me tell you, there are very few billionaires, very few millionaires, very few business owners that would do that to try to get one more person to try their brand. Yeah. And, whether you or I or Guy Kawasaki uses, Virgin Airlines will not affect his income. And so I had to ask Guy, I said, well, have you flown Virgin Airlines? And he says, yes, I have flown Virgin Airlines. It ruined me for all the other airlines. They are the best. And it just, when you're having that much fun, when you're willing to be what do you call it, humble enough to have fun, I guess,
Yeah.
right? Then
Yeah.
he just got another evangelist to be on his airline.
You can't beat that sort of marketing either. It's like, that's
right.
brilliant. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing what people can do when they really, when they're really having the joy of business, right? And when you don't care about what people think about you. And I think that's one of the things I love about Richard Branson. He just doesn't care.
I am. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, well, it's not having an image. It's being you. It's like, if you're willing to be you in business, that's what people are most attracted to. I mean, if you look at when, someone stumbles and falls and they pick themselves up and they're like, woo, or Richard Branson getting down his knees and doing that, it's like, that's what people are attracted to, the realness of you and the realness of business. And it's like, and that's where possibilities show up. And it's like, if you decide that it has to look a certain way, then you start to cut off all the other possibilities. It's like, there's so much available. And we spend most of our, life with our eyes shut, not looking at it. And be you. It's like, you are a great capacity. You are a great gift. And people, try and be someone else rather than being you in the world is an incredible gift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We're basically out of time, but I have a question for you. We've talked a lot about different things. We talked about some of your journey when you were in debt, and all these different things. You've written a couple of books. So I want to ask you this question. When you are faced with whatever the situation is, and let's just say that fear, whatever you want to call it, fear rears its ugly head. How do you deal with fear? How do you overcome fear?
Okay, well, that's a good question, because one of the things I've realized is that fear is not mine. It's usually, it's an energy that you buy into. A lot of the times I would ask, is this fear or is it excitement? Because you're usually about to step into something you haven't done before. It's the same thing when you're at a fun park or something like that, and you go on this ride you've never been on before. Are you scared or are you excited? So what if you started looking at it in a different way and asked, okay, is this fear or is this excitement for what I'm about to create? And the second question I would ask too is, who does this belong to? Is it yours or is it somebody else's? Because a lot of the times it's other people's, again, projections at you that, oh my God, she shouldn't be doing that. She's taking a risk. She's doing this. It's too high risk. It's too this. It's too whatever. And it's like, you know what? This is my life. This is my adventure. So I'm choosing this. So keep moving forward and keep choosing what you choose. That's what I do. So yeah, that's what I'd highly recommend. Hey, can I tell you this quick funny story? Because you said you've been married 30 years. I just met this couple at this great restaurant in Venice, Italy. We were there last year. The guy's been married 30 years with his wife. And Brendan, my husband, turned around and he said, so what's your secret? And he goes, we have a candlelit dinner once a week. And he went, I do Tuesdays and she does Thursdays. And I thought, that was brilliant. It was great. So I've got another book coming out called Relationship Are You Sure You Want One? I think I'm going to put that in there. I thought it was great. But that's the ability to look at things and go, okay, what's required here?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Simone, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I've had so much fun with this conversation, so many great takeaways. We talked about the 4 types of people you need in your business. We talked about traveling with your business. We talked about the joy, or getting out of debt joyfully, the joy of business. And if people want to find out more about you, I believe this is your website, Simone Milasas.com.
Yep.
.com. And you can go there. Her books are there. You can connect with her on Facebook, on Pinterest, anywhere. All her social media is there. And I look forward to catching up with you again.
Thank you so much, Bert. It's been awesome being on here. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate it.
You bet. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.